I'm Tim with Top of the World, and in this video I'm going to be showing you how to use the Price Your Craft website and the calculator apps. This is going to be a long video with explaining all the parts of the calculators, so it will be broken down into chapters so you can skip to the parts that you want. When you go to the website, you can see you have a couple of options now. We're going to be adding more calculators later, but right now there's rug making and ceramics. So let's hop right in. When you go to the rug pricing calculator, both calculators give you the option of imperial and metric. Also gives you the option of different currencies that you can work in. We're going to stick to imperial now. Really cool feature of the rug calculator is that you can calculate what the price is for multiple pile heights. So right now we're going to leave it at the default of a single pile. 0.63 is basically 16 millimeters, which is the standard for most tufting machines. But obviously you can make this, bigger or smaller. So this is where you're going to put in the size of the rug itself. I'll just drop in 24 by 32. This automatically calculates the square footage of that rug, and it tells us that we are going to be using 8 ounces per square foot, and that is based on the pile height. So that automatically calculates for you. Now we get into the next important section here, which is inputting what you paid for your materials. There's an explainer right here that shows you how to put those numbers in. It's important that you add every part of the material to get it to your house. So that it would include sales tax, that would include shipping, things like that. So in this case, we're going to use the Top of the World New Zealand wool. It comes in 1 pound cones. The price on the shelf is $25, but we do have to pay for shipping and maybe taxes. I'm going to add this to 28. Obviously, you would be putting in the exact number from the receipt. There's also options to put in Caron 1 pound or Red Heart, which are common, but also custom yarn as well. Same thing here on fabric selection. You're putting what the size and price that you paid online. So in this case, it's 175 inches wide and 36 inches long. The total price is, I believe it's around $24. We're going to say 28 on that as well. And you can see here that the calculator automatically calculates the cost of that material when it's added. We're going to add a felt backing here. Most felt backing is only 60 inches wide, 36 inches long. It's going to put a guess in here at $12. Let's put in $10. Gives us the total cost of that. Now we get into finishing. I'm just going to put in, we are going to be using twill tape. And let's say it's $12. So it tells us that it's $1.87. Notice how it also calculates automatically the circumference of your rug based on how big you put. You can also put any other materials for finishing in here as well. So you can add anything that you want. We're going to use Top of the World carpet adhesive. It's $50 a gallon, but again, it costs a little bit more to get to us. So we're just going to do 55. Okay. Scroll down. Now we have a couple of sections here. We have the material breakdown. So it tells us exactly what it costs in materials to make this rug. Now we get into one of the harder sections, which is calculating how long it's going to take you. We're just going to add in here, let's say it's taking us, this is an estimate of course, 4 hours to tuft and finish. Let's say it takes us 30 minutes to finish. Obviously, this is going to depend greatly on how complicated your design is or how finished you actually want it or the client wants it. Now I get my cost summary here. I've got my material cost or total labor, finishing labor, total labor added together. Total cost to make is $145.83. So a pretty cool little thing here. Now we get into final pricing. Remember this total cost to make, that's what it costs us to make. Obviously we want to make money, but we also need to cover things like overhead. So that's where this percentage comes into handy. I generally recommend that people mark their stuff up 50% because that is a pretty base standard for marking up items for selling it to folks. So if we just put in 50%, that rug is $218. Obviously, we can go in and make changes so that it's even more than that if we want. Okay. Another really cool feature we have here is you can add client information and export that invoice to a PDF. So I'm going to do that now. And I'm going to say Tim's rug. I forget what the dimensions of it were. Just going to try to make it as clear as possible. 24 by 32. Going to drop that in here. Tim Bob. It's not my name. Drop in the email address here. Shipping address. Now when we actually hit export, it actually generates a PDF invoice for us, which is really cool. But another cool feature is that you can record the sale for analytics if you pay for a tier. You can save it as a draft. You can save it as a template. So obviously a draft, you can come back later, or you can save it as a template for use later. And I'm going to go ahead and I can just type in here 24 by 32 inch rug. So that way I can come back later and just pull up that same rug. I know the dimensions of it, and that's really cool. So that is how to use the rug pricing calculator. Okay. Now let's get into the ceramics calculator. On the ceramics pricing calculator, we have a simple and advanced mode. So two modes here. We'll start with simple first. We have similar features that you can work in both imperial and metric, and we have currencies here that we can use. Based on a few different ceramics websites, we have put in averages here for these items. Okay, so let's say that it's a bowl that's 6 inches. That on average uses about 2 pounds of clay. Now I get down to my finishing. So the simple one is you don't have a lot of custom control. So these are basically averages or things that we have found on websites that sell clay materials that say how long their materials will last. So we're just going to do a pre-mixed jarred glaze. This is going to automatically calculate that you need about 2.5 ounces. Okay. It knows how big this plate is because we have put in a 6-inch diameter plate. So obviously it is putting in 6 by 6 by 4. So this is just an average of what that size will be. Now we have our material cost breakdown here. So, I forgot to do firing cost. So it's automatically calculating what our firing cost is going to be based on the averages of the electrical cost. Okay. So now we have our material cost breakdown, which shows us how much clay, how much glaze, what the firing cost. So we know that it costs us $12.21 to create this thing. Okay. Now we get into labor. So let's say it takes actually about 15 minutes to make. I mean, it's a plate, maybe 20 minutes. And finishing, all we're doing is glazing, final touches. So let's say 10 minutes. So we're adding about $12.50 in materials cost. So we've got our cost summary here that gives us $24.75 to make a plate. And we are marking that up to whatever percentage we think it should be. Okay. And you can also put in custom numbers here if you think it should be charged more. We've got the same situation here. We can add in client information. So if it's a custom item, then we can export that as a PDF. So I'm just going to say Bob's plate. Goes to bob@bob.com. We've got our address here. We can record this cell as well. And what it will do is record $39.59 into our analytics. We can save it as a draft, save it as a template. So that we can come back to it later, use it later. And of course, exporting the invoice as a PDF. So that is just the simple mode for the ceramics pricing calculator. Now we're going to hop into the advanced mode for the ceramics pricing calculator. Got the same features here in terms of imperial and metric. But now we have a lot more control over how much clay we're actually using, how much glaze you're using. So you're going to need to know how much glaze and clay you actually used for that item. So you're going to weigh that out if you're doing production or you're making it, or maybe weigh it at the very end of making it so that you know how much clay you used. So obviously we're also going to do that for glaze as well. We're going to switch over to imperial here. So let's say we use 3 ounces of glaze. Now we get into the same situation as always. We're going to go ahead and drop in how much we paid for those exact materials. So clay comes in 25-pound bags, 50-pound boxes. So how much did we pay for that exact clay, that raw clay material? So that's what we put here. And the same thing, if we're glazing it, then obviously we're going to put in how much the volume of that jar was, that, if it was a pint or a quart, gallon, whatever it is, and we're actually putting in the cost here, what we paid. Okay, now we get down to, so this tells us that we have $47.65 in material cost. And it does look like I need to fix this. This math is wrong, so I'll go in and fix this. Now we can get down to our firing cost, and you can actually put in what your cost per kilowatt hour is. So that's going to be found on your electric bill. And this is when you're just going to measure that item, and it will tell you how, it will tell you how many cubic inches it is or cubic centimeters and give you the firing cost of that. Okay. Now we get down to how long it's going to take, and I'm going to go ahead. Seems like a pretty big piece, so I'll go ahead and add 2 hours here. Finishing labor, we're going to do 1 hour here. Okay. So my total labor cost is $75. I do need to look at this material cost because that number doesn't look quite right to me. But we have the same situation here that we can determine how much we need to mark it up, and that will give us what our cost is that we can tell the customer. So we're going to say Bob's custom piece, Still going to use the same information. We can do the same thing here. We can record that cell. It's going to put it into our analytics, and we're going to save it as a template. Bob's custom piece. So that way we can come back to it later and reuse that template. So now that I've talked about the calculators, let's get into a little bit more about what some features in some of the paid tiers go over. So if you're in an upper tier, you can actually save those templates, which will put them all here. So this will allow me to go in and reuse these templates. So I don't have to enter all that information again. It's pretty cool. It also is going to save those drafts for me if I save it, so I can go in and continue to edit those items if I don't have time to finish it, completely. And then it also puts all of my invoices that I have sent here. So that's a pretty cool feature. Obviously, it has my plans here. The profile allows you to put your information here along with your logo so that the logo will show on your invoice. Okay? The last thing that we're going to go over is our Studio budget. And this is available in the Studio Pro version. You can see here Studio budget. Okay? So what this is a small calculator for trying to become financially viable in your own studio. So it's a simple calculator that takes into account your studio expenses, studio revenue, and gives you a little budget summary. So you have an idea of, let's say, how many pieces you need to sell or how much you sell. So this is a really basic budgeting tool. But what it can do is simply take into account all the things that you use in your studio, including custom ones. So let's say that you have a monthly coffee budget of $50. It can actually take that into account, which is pretty cool. Okay. It can also take into account variable monthly expenses like marketing, or maybe you have some other things. You can add other items here to make that go into your studio. So let's say you travel for work, travel to a craft show, and that's going to cost you $500. So this gives you total monthly overhead, assuming this is an average, right? So total monthly overhead. So this is about what you need to be making per month to break even in your studio. So we're going to update and continue. Now this is a section where you actually put in your studio revenue, what your income is. Now this is a little simplified. So this is just giving you a basic idea of what it would take. So for example, if I sell rugs and my average price of rug is $250, and let's say that I can make 6 rugs at that, my monthly revenue in rugs is $1,500. And then let's say that I have rugs that are small. So let's say I have rugs that are $50 and I can make 3 of those and I can add those. So this gives my total revenue that I'm bringing in making, objects. Now let's say that I teach some and that brings in $300 a month. Now my total monthly revenue is $1,950, which is I'm on a good track here to break even or make money. So we're going to save this. This brings us to our budget summary. And what you can see here is just a total breakdown of my expenses, my revenue, the other income, It shows whether I have a net income or loss. And then you can actually save this scenario. So I can say, okay, this is a month where I make, you can actually put in your, say how many rugs that you're making during the, say 15 rugs plus teaching, and save this scenario. And then you can actually export this as a CSV. And that is a summary of how to use the Price Your Craft website. We are going to be adding some more calculators later. You can also request a calculator if you'd like to request a calculator by sending us a message. So thanks for watching.